There are quite a few cool cars that we in the West are never lucky enough to get. Some of them are pretty obvious, like their Toyota Century, for example, and others are just really weird, obscure, and super cool. This is a great example of that. This is an Autozam AZ-1. This is a car so cool that when the camera's not looking, I just want to lick it. Look at it. Always wanted to drive one of these. So the first thing you'll notice is how small it is and how cramped this cockpit is. I'm not particularly tall, 1.70 m something, and I'm pretty well wedged in here, and that's with the Targa panels above my head removed. They're stowed in the back. The K-Class, you might know this, but it's a fantastic idea that really would translate well to Western cities, because it meant that cars had to be a certain size, have a certain capacity, and it's a great way of basically less space used up on the roads, and you can only own a car if you've got a parking space for it. So it's really clever, simple engineering, and what that normally means is that the cars can be quite dull. K-Class cars are built for economy, and therefore they're not a lot of fun. But back in 1985, Suzuki started on a project called the RS-1, and it was essentially to meet those K-Class regs, but to be a lot of fun. Now, they got so far down the road with that particular design, and it eventually turned into the Suzuki Cappuccino, which is kind of a competitor to this. Now, the engineer thought it was so nice, this AZ-1, that he took the design to Mazda and said, "Hey Mazda, build this." So they put it under their Autozam brand, which is one that you seldom find outside Japan, and this car was born. And I'm so glad that they made it, because I think this is something special. So like all K-Class cars, we've got a 3-cylinder 660cc engine in the back, and in this case it is turbocharged. Now, this particular model is a very rare Mazda speed model, which means it's got a limited slip diff as well. And I don't know how many horsepower it's got, but I can tell you that it's quick enough. 0 to 60 is about 11 seconds, and it will be flat out because of the gearing at about 90. Now, the designer, a man whose name I cannot pronounce, also worked on the MX-5, or the Unos as you might know it, and that's a car that I also own and I absolutely love. And there are a few little trims pieces that geeks like me might spot, like the door handles and the winders. That's all standard Unos stuff, but the rest of it is bespoke to this model and bespoke to Autozam, which is, fairly rare. I don't know where you get some of these trim bits from if you ever had a problem. The way it drives, though, is very, very different to anything else I've ever driven. You've got tiny little wheels, you've got a very short wheelbase, and you've got a very narrow power band. So it really does kind of ping around like a table tennis ball. And then whack it around this hairpin now, and you see exactly what I mean. I bloody love this. There are some very clever tricks using the construction of the AZ-1 to keep the weight down to 720 kilos. So you've got these GRP plastic panels on the outside, which are really cool, really striking things, but what you've also got is an aluminium honeycomb effect, which is in the bulkhead and in the floor, and that really keeps the weight down. The styling is really smart. I mean, they made 3 designs of this, the A, B and the C originally, and this is the style that eventually made it into production, but there's no hiding the fact that it was inspired by a Ferrari Testarossa and maybe a little bit of Ford RS200 rally car as well. Now, normally you might think that's a little bit sort of style over substance, but actually the engineering package underneath this is huge fun. So you've got kind of something that's physically 60-70% the size of a supercar, and I'm promising you it's 60 to 70% as much fun to drive. And of course, this doesn't actually cost a lot. Now, as a bit of a confession, one of the most striking points of this car, and the reason that every time we stop, people pop out and grab their phones and take photos, are these gull-wing doors. Now, I might be committing motoring journalist suicide by saying this, but with the exception of the original Mercedes 300 SL, which had them for a reason, I hate gull-wing doors. It's like you've taken a perfectly good functioning component and redesigned it to be heavier and more complex, just so as it can be showy. And I don't really think that serves any purpose, so I don't really like it. But I can just about forgive it in this, because this is a car that doesn't take itself too seriously. And I'm guessing that if you're one of the 5,000 people that own one of these worldwide, then you probably don't take yourself too seriously either. And I think that's a good thing. Oh, this is nice. What are you doing? Stop it!